My son-in-law was yelling and banging on my door like a wild animal. An hour ago, I changed the locks on my house because family betrayal had poisoned every corner of it. A few minutes later, he grabbed a crowbar and rushed to break the lock, hoping for easy prey. But what happened next made him run away in horror. Justice that struck harder than any tool. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The pharmacy bag felt heavier than it should have. Just blood pressure medication, routine as clockwork. But my fingers cramped around the plastic handles as I turned into the driveway. Chester's Nissan sat there, metallic blue catching the afternoon sun. 2:30 on a Wednesday. He should have been at work. I killed the engine and sat there a moment, staring at that car. Della never mentioned him taking time off. Then again, my daughter hadn't been mentioning much lately beyond how expensive everything had become. The front door opened without resistance. I'd stopped locking it during the day after Eleanor died. Seemed pointless when the house felt empty anyway. Now it held 3 people, and somehow felt emptier than ever. The hallway stretched ahead, hardwood gleaming where the light hit it. That's when I heard the voice, Chester's voice, muffled but distinct, coming from my home office at the end of the hall. The door stood slightly open, a wedge of afternoon light spilling across the floor. I moved quietly. Old habit from my auditing days. Sometimes you learned more by listening than asking. The old man's got maybe 5 years left, tops. Chester's voice carried that particular tone he used when he thought he was being clever. The house is already worth nearly $400,000. My hand found the doorframe. The wood felt solid under my palm, real, while everything else started tilting sideways. Della's sure she can get him to change the will, Chester continued. He's so lonely since the old lady died, he believes everything we tell him. The pharmacy bag slipped. I caught it before it fell, my other hand still gripping the doorframe hard enough that my knuckles went white. A little more time, and he'll sign the house over to Della while he's still alive. Then we're set. A pause, then laughter. Yeah, he's completely clueless. Easiest mark I've ever worked. I stepped backward. The floorboard near the bathroom creaked. If you hit it wrong, I'd been meaning to fix that for 6 months. I avoided it now, moving carefully until I reached the kitchen. The sink felt cold under my hands. I gripped the counter edge and stared through the window at the backyard. Eleanor's rose bushes needed trimming. I'd been putting it off because she'd always handled the garden, and touching it felt like admitting she wasn't coming back. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my mind had gone very quiet, very clear. 43 years at Colorado First Bank. Started as a junior auditor, retired as senior audit manager. I'd built a career on finding discrepancies, on noticing when numbers didn't add up. How had I missed this? Because I'd been looking at them through grief, I realized, through loneliness, through the desperate need to believe that family meant something. That filter was gone now. Dinner happened the way it always did. I'd made pasta with marinara sauce, thrown together a salad. Wednesday routine. We sat at the same table where Eleanor and I had eaten for 37 years, and I watched my daughter and her husband the way I used to watch bank statements. Dad, you have this big house all to yourself. Della picked at her pasta, that particular whine creeping into her voice. We're really struggling with rent prices right now, and utilities keep going up. Chester nodded, chewing slowly. We're family, right? Family helps each other out. I cut my chicken breast into precise squares. Didn't look up, didn't respond. The market's crazy right now, Della continued. She mistook my silence for consideration, leaned forward with that earnest expression she'd perfected. We're not asking for charity or anything. Just maybe, I don't know, we could talk about long-term arrangements? Long-term arrangements. Code for sign over the house. Things are just so expensive, she said again. I took a bite. Chewed, swallowed, set down my fork with deliberate care. Chester's phone buzzed. He checked it, smiled at something on the screen, tucked it away. His movements had a particular fluidity, the confidence of someone who believed he was winning. I'd seen that look before in borrowers who thought they'd fooled the underwriting department. They were always surprised when the audit caught them. The house settled into quiet around 10:30. I heard their bedroom door close, heard the muffled sound of the television through the walls. Gave it another 30 minutes. then walked to my office. The safe sat in the closet, hidden behind a panel Eleanor had helped me install 15 years ago. Old-fashioned combination lock, 27, 14, 33, her birthday. The dial clicked smoothly under my fingers. I pulled out everything. Bank statements, insurance papers, investment accounts, credit card bills. Spread them across the desk under the lamp's circle of light. My reading glasses sat in their case by the computer. I put them on and started reviewing. Financial auditing is about patterns. You look for irregularities, transactions that don't fit the baseline. I'd been doing this for 4 decades. My hands moved automatically, sorting papers into stacks, my eyes scanning line items. Credit card statement from March. Family groceries, $340. But I remembered that shopping trip. We'd spent maybe $200. I'd been there. April. Household supplies, $225. I'd bought a new shower curtain and some light bulbs. $30, maybe $40. June. Emergency car repair, $890. My car hadn't needed repairs. Neither had Della's. Chester's Nissan had been in the shop, but he'd said his insurance covered it. I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. Dates in column A, descriptions in column B, amounts in column C, actual costs in column D, discrepancy in column E. 2 hours later, the numbers stared back at me from the screen. $23,000 over 12 months. Not carelessness. Systematic theft. I leaned back in my chair. The house was completely silent now, that deep quiet of after midnight. Through the window, I could see Chester's car in the driveway, streetlight reflecting off the hood. My fingers drummed once on the desk edge, an old habit from when I found discrepancies in corporate accounts. That particular rhythm meant I'd caught something. I looked at the papers spread before me, at the glowing screen, at the reflection of my own face in the dark window. Not for much longer, I thought, looking at that car. Not for much longer. That night became the longest I'd spent in years. The office chair creaked as I shifted weight, the coffee I'd made around 1 a.m. going cold in its mug beside the laptop. 4 in the morning now, and the house held that particular stillness that comes before dawn. I'd moved past the paper trail. Now I was digging deeper. The Colorado Secretary of State Business Registry opened easily enough. Public records, searchable by address. I typed in my street number and let the database work. 3 results appeared. Summit Solutions, LLC. Registered 8 months ago. Registered agent, Chester Michael Brennan. Principal address, my house. Peak Consulting Group. 6 months ago. Same agent. Same address. Mountain Ventures, Inc. 4 months ago. Chester's name again, my address again. None had websites. None showed any actual business activity. Shell companies, probably. But for what? I took screenshots of everything, created a folder on my desktop titled Evidence. Printed copies went into the locked drawer of my file cabinet. I'd learned young that digital files could disappear. Always keep a paper backup. My credit monitoring account came next. I paid for the premium service, the kind that showed every inquiry, every attempt to access my information. There it was. 3 months ago, a hard inquiry from a lending institution in Denver. Mountain Financial Group. I'd never heard of them. Never authorized any inquiry. I opened a new document and started taking notes in my old audit format. Date, event, evidence source, cross-references. The muscle memory of investigation work came back like I'd never stopped. Outside, the sky started turning that pre-dawn gray. I heard pipes groaning as the house's ancient heating system kicked on. Time to move. I showered, shaved, changed into fresh clothes. When I looked in the mirror, the exhaustion showed. Shadows under my eyes, deeper lines around my mouth. But I looked alert, focused. In the kitchen, the coffee maker burbled and hissed. I was pouring the first cup when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Della appeared first, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing sweatpants and one of Chester's old college shirts. Chester followed, already dressed, checking his phone with that absorbed expression people get when they're avoiding conversation. "Morning, Dad." Della opened the refrigerator, stared into it like the contents might have changed overnight. "We need to go to Denver for a couple days. Chester has a business meeting." I took a sip of coffee, let the silence stretch just long enough. "What kind of business?" Chester's head came up fast. "Investment opportunity. Tech startup. Could be big." His voice had an edge to it, defensive. "When are you leaving?" I kept my tone neutral, mildly curious. "This afternoon." Della grabbed the orange juice, poured a glass. "We'll be back Friday evening. That okay?" "Drive safely," I said. They moved through the house like people who owned it, packing bags, arguing about what to bring. I sat in the living room with a book I wasn't reading, positioned so I could see through the window to the driveway. Around 1:30, Chester carried their overnight bags to the car, set them in the trunk, closed it, then looked around quickly. That particular scan people do when they're checking if anyone's watching. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Thick, white, business size. He opened it, counted the contents with his thumb. I couldn't see denominations, but the thickness suggested at least $2,000, maybe $3,000. Cash, for a business meeting, about a tech startup. Chester's body language told me everything. The furtive glance, the quick count, the way he shoved it back into his jacket and zipped it closed. This wasn't business. This was gambling money, or payment for something he didn't want traced. The Nissan backed out of the driveway at 1:45. I watched until it disappeared around the corner at Cascade Avenue. Then I went back to my office and picked up the phone. The locksmith arrived at 8:15 the next morning. Professional outfit. Arrived in a van with the company logo on the side. Young guy, maybe 30, competent and efficient. "All the exterior locks," he confirmed, standing at my front door with his toolkit. "Everything. Front, back, side door to the garage. And I want deadbolts on the bedroom doors. Mine and the 2 spare rooms." He didn't ask questions. Just nodded and got to work. While he worked, I made my second call. Margaret Hall's office number hadn't changed in the 6 years since I'd retired. Her paralegal answered, professional and crisp. And after I explained who I was, Margaret herself picked up. "Otis Fletcher, it's been what, 4 years?" "6, I said, "since my retirement party. I need a consultation, as soon as possible." Something in my voice must have registered. "This afternoon? 2:00? I'll be there." Her office occupied the 3rd floor of a modern building on Tejon Street, downtown where parking cost $8 an hour. The elevator opened onto a reception area with leather chairs and abstract art on cream-colored walls. Margaret appeared in her office doorway right at 2, punctual, like always. 55 now, gray threading through her dark hair, wearing a navy suit and glasses on a chain around her neck, sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Otis!" She shook my hand firmly. "You look tired." "Rough couple of days." Her office smelled like leather and paper, walls lined with legal volumes that probably cost more than my first car. She gestured to the chair across from her desk, sat down, folded her hands. "What brings you here?" I opened the folder I'd brought. "I need to remove someone from my property. 2 people, my daughter and her husband." Margaret's expression shifted, concern mixed with professional interest. She leaned forward slightly. "Living situation issues?" "Worse." I slid the folder across her desk. "Theft, fraud, and they're planning to manipulate me into signing over my house." She picked up the folder, opened it, started reading. I waited, watching her face as she absorbed the credit card statements, the screenshots of the business registrations, my documentation of the discrepancies. 5 minutes passed. She turned pages methodically, her expression growing harder. Finally, she looked up. "Otis, if they're living in your house without a formal lease, technically they're guests. But after this much time, how long have they been there?" 14 months. That complicates things. She set down the folder, removed her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Colorado law may consider this established residency. You have the right to evict them, but there's a process. Typically requires 30-day notice. What if they're committing fraud using my address?" "That changes everything. That's criminal. You could file a police report, pursue charges." She put her glasses back on, pulled a legal pad toward her, started making notes. "Talk me through exactly what you found." I did. Margaret listened without interrupting, occasionally writing something down. When I finished, she sat back. "This will take time," she said. "Weeks, possibly months. Are you prepared for that?" "I have time. And patience." I met her eyes. "What's the first step?" We spent another hour in her conference room, coffee in paper cups, my evidence spread across the table. Margaret outlined the strategy with the precision of someone who'd done this many times. Document everything. I was already ahead on that. Change the locks. Legally complicated but possible given the fraud evidence. File a police report about the business registrations. Formal eviction notice if they refuse to leave voluntarily. Modify my will immediately to eliminate any inheritance expectations. I took notes in my small notebook, the kind I'd carried during audits. Bullet points, action items, timeline estimates. The locks are already changed, I said. Margaret paused, pen hovering over her legal pad. When? This morning, before I came here. She studied me for a long moment. Otis, I want to make sure you understand. This is going to get ugly. Family conflicts always do. They stopped being family when they decided to rob me. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. They come back tomorrow evening. What do I do? Don't let them in. Tell them they need to collect their belongings during supervised times, which we'll arrange. I'll draft a formal notice for you to serve them. I looked at my notes, drew a line under change locks, wrote, Friday police report. Under that, next week, new will. I underlined police report twice. The parking lot felt surreal after the fluorescent reality of Margaret's office. I sat in my Camry, 12 years old, Eleanor had helped pick it out, and didn't start the engine immediately. Through the windshield, downtown Colorado Springs stretched out in afternoon sunlight. People walked past, going about their ordinary lives. None of them had just planned to evict their own daughter. I pulled out my notebook, reviewed what I'd written. The plan looked solid, legal, methodical. In the side mirror, my reflection looked different. Harder lines around my mouth, eyes that held something that hadn't been there 2 days ago. I started the engine. Chester and Della would return tomorrow evening, expecting to walk into the house they'd been systematically robbing for over a year, expecting the same trusting old man they'd been manipulating. By then, everything would be different. The locks were already changed. The attorney was engaged. The evidence was documented. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed home. Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. I'd been awake since 5:30, showered and dressed before the sun came up. By 7, the coffee was already made, breakfast dishes washed and drying in the rack. My small notebook lay open on the kitchen table, the plan written out in bullet points that looked deceptively simple. I stared out the window at the empty driveway. Chester and Della wouldn't return until evening. That gave me hours. My phone sat beside the notebook. Premier Lock and Security's number already pulled up on the screen. My pen tapped once against the table, that old nervous habit. But my mind stayed clear. This was it, the point where everything changed. The white van arrived at 8:15, logo printed in blue letters on the side. The locksmith who climbed out looked about 40, tool belt riding low on his hips, competent in the way people get when they've done the same job 1,000 times. Morning! I met him at the front door. Thanks for coming on short notice. You said you need all exterior locks changed? Everything. Front door, back door, garage entry, high security deadbolts. I paused. The best you've got. He nodded, no questions, just got to work. The front door took 20 minutes. I watched from inside, glancing occasionally through the window toward the street. The new lock was heavy duty, commercial grade, the kind of thing you'd see on a business. The deadbolt slid home with a solid thunk that sounded like finality. Back door next, then the side entrance to the garage. He worked methodically, the rasp of the drill and click of metal filling the quiet house. 90 minutes total. $340 paid in cash. 3 sets of new keys in my palm. You're all set, he said, packing up his tools. Those'll hold against anything short of a battering ram. I held the old keys after he left, the ones Chester and Della had been using freely for 14 months. Walked to the kitchen, opened the trash can, dropped them in. Not anymore. By 10, I was in the guest bedroom pulling suitcases from the closet. I worked methodically, the way I used to work through audit files. Della's clothes folded precisely, placed in layers in the larger suitcase. Chester's belongings went into boxes I'd brought up from the garage, his dress shirt still on hangers, shoes paired and wrapped in newspaper. I didn't rush, didn't throw anything. This wasn't about anger. This was about removing problems. The bathroom came next. Toiletries into plastic grocery bags, Della's makeup case, Chester's electric razor, her shampoo bottles lined up along the tub edge. everything that belonged to them. In the living room, I collected Chester's laptop from the coffee table, Della's magazines from the rack beside the couch, a few pieces of mail addressed to them, the small accumulations of 14 months. On the nightstand in their room, I found a framed photograph. Della at maybe 7 years old, missing her front tooth, grinning at the camera with that uncomplicated joy children have before the world teaches them to want things. I held it for a moment. That girl didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. But the photo wasn't mine to keep. I set it carefully in her suitcase. The boxes and suitcases lined the garage wall by 1 o'clock. 8 boxes, 2 large suitcases, 1 small container holding documents, birth certificates, social security cards, accumulated mail that might matter, kept separate from the rest. I was carrying the last box when I noticed Brian Turner, standing at the fence line between our properties. "Otis," his voice carried concern. "Everything all right?" I set the box down, straightened up. Brian had lived next door for 15 years, retired from the postal service at 60, spent his days gardening and watching the neighborhood with the particular attention of someone who'd spent decades noticing details. He wore his yard work clothes, gardening gloves still on, pruning shears in one hand. Better than it's been in a long time, actually. Spring cleaning? He knew it was more than that. Brian wasn't stupid. Something like that, making changes. Saw the locksmith this morning. My house, my locks, my choice. Brian nodded slowly, understanding passing across his face. "You need anything, I'm right here." "I appreciate that, Brian." I met his eyes. "Might need you to remember what you've seen today." "I've got a good memory." He returned to his hedges, but I noticed him glancing over periodically as I finished loading the garage. Good to have a witness who paid attention. By late afternoon, I'd done a final walkthrough. The guest bedroom looked strange. Bed stripped to the mattress, closet empty, walls bare where Della had hung a mirror. The bathroom held only my belongings, the counter space suddenly vast without their clutter. The living room felt lighter, cleaner, like the house could breathe again. I positioned myself in the living room, where I had a clear view of the driveway through the front window. My phone stayed in my pocket, fully charged. I'd already typed 911 into the keypad, hadn't pressed call yet, but it was ready. Margaret Hall's number sat in my recent calls list. On the table near the front door, I'd set up a small audio recorder. Colorado was a one-party consent state. If I needed evidence of threats, I'd have it. My heart rate ticked up, but stayed controlled. No second guessing. Not now. I knew Chester would be angry. I didn't know exactly how angry. That's what the 911 was for. 6:45. The sound of an engine made my pulse jump. Headlights swept across the living room wall as the vehicle turned into the driveway. Through the window, I watched Chester's Nissan pull in and stop. Della got out on the passenger side, stretched. Long drive from Denver, stiff from sitting. Chester popped the trunk, pulled out their overnight bag. They walked toward the front door, talking. I couldn't hear the words yet, but their body language read, casual, relaxed. They thought they were coming home. Chester reached into his pocket, pulled out his key. He inserted it into the lock. Turned it. Nothing. He tried again. Pulled the key out, looked at it like it had personally betrayed him, jammed it back in. "What the—" His voice carried now, louder. "What's wrong?" Della moved closer. "Key doesn't work." Irritation sharpening his tone. He tried again, forcing it, jiggling the lock. Then his fist hit the door. Once, twice. "Otis, open up!" I stood at the window, didn't move toward the door. "Otis!" Pounding harder now. "What did you do? Open this door!" Chester's face caught the porch light. Confusion shifting to anger, shifting to something harder. Rage building. "Otis, what kind of stunt are you pulling?" Della joined in. "Dad, open the door. This is crazy." I heard Chester run around the side of the house. The back door. Same result. His footsteps pounded back to the front. More hammering on the door. "Dad, please!" Della's voice cracking. "We live here." I pulled out my phone. Dialed 911. Held it to my ear. 911, what's your emergency?" "I need police at my residence. Someone is attempting to break into my home." "Are you safe? Are they inside?" "I'm inside. They're outside. But it's escalating." I gave her the address. She told me units were on the way. Through the window, I saw Chester storm back to his car. Pop the trunk. Return holding something long and metallic. Crowbar. Tire iron from his emergency kit. The streetlight caught the metal as he raised it. Della stepped back, uncertainty crossing her face for the first time. "If you won't open it, I'll open it myself." I spoke into the phone again. "He has a crowbar. He's threatening to break the door down." Chester raised the tool toward the lock. Metal glinted under the porch light. In the distance, sirens. Chester froze, his head turned toward the sound. I stood at the window, phone still pressed to my ear, and watched his face realize what was about to happen. The sirens grew louder. The sirens became deafening before going silent. The patrol car pulled to the curb, lights flashing red and blue across the front yard. Chester still held the crowbar, frozen in the driveway like someone had hit pause on his life. Della stood several feet behind him, hands covering her mouth. I remained at the window, phone in hand, watching it unfold. Across the street, neighbor lights flickered on. Brian Turner stood in his yard, witnessing everything. The porch light illuminated the scene like a stage. Chester's car door still open from when he'd grabbed the crowbar, the tool itself catching light with every flash from the patrol car. An officer stepped out, 30s, composed, hand near his belt, in that careful way they're trained. He assessed the situation in seconds. Man with crowbar, woman distressed, lights on inside the house, potential for violence. "Sir, put the tool on the ground, now." Chester turned, startled. "What? No, you don't understand." "I'm not asking. Drop the tool. Step away from the door." "This is my father-in-law's house. He locked us out. We live here." "That doesn't give you the right to break in." The officer's voice got harder. "Tool. Ground. This is your last warning." Chester looked at the crowbar, at the officer's stance, ran calculations, set it down slowly on the porch, stepped back, hands partially raised. The officer approached, kicked the crowbar toward the patrol car. "Step down off the porch, both of you." "Officer, please." Della's voice shook. "There's been a mistake. My father—" "Ma'am, step down. We'll sort this out. But first, I need everyone calm and separated." A second officer had emerged from the patrol car. He positioned himself near Chester and Della as they moved to the front lawn. The first officer approached my door, knocked. "Police. Homeowner. Can you come to the door?" I opened it partially, the chain I'd installed still engaged. "Sir, are you the homeowner?" "Yes, Otis Gibson. This is my property." "You called about a break-in attempt." "That man tried to force entry with a crowbar after I changed the locks." "Why did you change the locks?" "It's my house. I'm allowed to change my own locks." His nameplate read, Rodriguez. He studied me for a moment. "Can I see documentation proving ownership?" "Of course. One moment." I stepped back, grabbed the folder I'd prepared. Property deed with my name. Recent tax statement. Driver's license matching the address. Current utility bills. Rodriguez examined everything with his flashlight. Everything checked out. He walked back to where Chester and Della stood with the second officer. "Explain your side." Chester's agitation had ramped up. "We've been living here over a year. He can't just lock us out. We have rights." "Do you pay rent?" Chester hesitated. "It's family arrangement." "He's her father. So no lease agreement, no rental contract?" "It's not like that," Della said. "We're family. We help him out." "But the house is solely in his name?" "Yes, but—" "And tonight, when your key didn't work, you retrieved a crowbar and threatened to force the door?" "I didn't threaten anyone. I was just—" "Sir, I have the 911 call recording, and I arrived to find you holding a crowbar at the door. That's attempted forced entry." Della turned toward the house, voice breaking. "Dad, please, just talk to us." I stood in the doorway. "Officer, I don't want them on my property." "How can you do this?" Della's voice hit a pitch I'd never heard before. "We're your family." Headlights swept the scene again. Margaret Hall's sedan parked on the street. She emerged with her briefcase, walked up with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. "Officer, I'm Margaret Hall, attorney representing Mr. Gibson." Rodriguez nodded. "Counselor." "My client contacted me when he changed his locks. I advised him of his rights as property owner." She provided a clear, concise explanation. Rodriguez listened, professional and attentive. "My client is the sole property owner. There's no lease agreement with these individuals. Under Colorado law, he has the right to determine who resides in his home." "What about tenants' rights?" Rodriguez asked. "They've been living there over a year." Without a rental agreement, they're legally considered guests. Guests can be asked to leave. If they refuse, formal eviction proceedings may be required, but the property owner has the right to change his locks and refuse entry. "This is insane!" Chester shouted from the lawn. "You can't just throw people out on the street." Margaret ignored him. Additionally, my client has documentation showing financial fraud committed by the son-in-law using Mr. Gibson's address and personal information. We'll be filing formal charges. Rodriguez conferred briefly with the second officer. Decision made. He approached Chester. "Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back." "What? You're arresting me?" "Attempted property damage, attempted forced entry, disorderly conduct. This is ridiculous. I'll sue. The handcuffs clicked into place. Chester resisted verbally but not physically, smart enough not to make it worse. The second officer read him his Miranda rights while Rodriguez secured the cuffs. Della rushed toward the porch where I stood with Margaret. "How could you? We're your family." I met her eyes, voice steady. This was the moment. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't sit around planning how long until I die so they can take my house. Della went white, froze completely. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She knew. He knows. "Dad, we were just..." Chester said. I heard Chester, on the phone, planning my funeral while I'm still alive. She stepped backward, hand over her mouth. "It wasn't like that. We weren't..." "Don't insult me by lying anymore." Margaret opened her briefcase, removed a document, handed it to Della. "This is a formal notice. You're prohibited from entering or approaching this property without the owner's explicit permission. Violation constitutes criminal trespass." Della held the paper with shaking hands. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my client's concern. Your belongings are in the garage. You have 24 hours to arrange pickup with police escort." "Everything's packed," I added. "Your documents are in the separate box." Rodriguez escorted Chester to the patrol car, placed him in the back seat. The second officer, Williams according to his nameplate, took statements from me, from Margaret, from Brian Turner, who confirmed hearing shouting and seeing the crowbar. Della stood alone in the front yard, holding the trespass notice, crying. "You'll need to come to the station tomorrow to file formal report," Rodriguez told me. "I'll be there." He turned to Della. "Ma'am, you need to leave the property now." "But our things..." "You heard the attorney. 24 hours with police escort. For now, you need to go." Della walked slowly to the car, got in the driver's seat, sat there for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, shoulders shaking. Finally, she started the engine, pulled out of the driveway. The taillights disappeared down the street. The patrol car, with Chester inside, followed in the same direction. The front yard emptied. Just me, Margaret, and Brian, who'd walked over from his property. "You all right, Otis?" I exhaled a long breath. "I will be." "We're just getting started," Margaret said. "Tomorrow we file the fraud complaint." I nodded. "One step at a time." I looked at my house, not theirs. Lights on inside, door still open where I stood. For the first time in 14 months, I could breathe in my own home. Margaret closed her briefcase. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow continues." I watched her walk to her car. Brian gave my shoulder a supportive pat, returned to his house. I stood alone on my porch. In the distance, more sirens heading elsewhere. Someone else's emergency now. I stepped inside, closed the door. The new lock clicked solidly into place. The weekend passed in deliberate silence. Saturday morning arrived with coffee and a newspaper I didn't really read. My phone sat beside the mug, screen showing 12 unread text messages, all from Della. I glanced at it periodically, but never unlocked it. The house felt different now. Quieter, yes, but also emptier, in a way I hadn't expected. I'd slept better the past 2 nights than I had in months, but I stayed alert, waiting for whatever came next. Late Saturday morning, my phone rang. Not a text, an actual call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello?" "This is the El Paso County Sheriff's Office inmate notification system. Chester William Morrison has been released from custody on bond, posted at 0900 hours today." I listened to the full automated message, then hung up. Chester made bail. $5,000. I wondered where they'd found that money. Borrowed, begged, maybe Della had hidden savings. Didn't matter. Chester was out, which meant the counterattack would begin. By Saturday afternoon, I finally opened my text messages, scrolled through what Della had sent over the past 2 days. Thursday night, right after the arrest. Dad, please answer. We need to talk. This is insane. Friday morning. I can't believe you'd do this to your own daughter. After everything. Friday afternoon. Remember when Mom died and I stayed with you for 3 weeks? I took care of you. This is how you repay me? Friday evening. Chester made mistakes, but we're family. You're supposed to forgive family. Saturday morning before the bail. You're going to regret this. You're going to die alone and bitter. Saturday after he got out. We're not giving up. You can't just throw us away. I read each one twice. Didn't respond. Instead, I took screenshots, documentation, then muted Della's number. Not blocked. Muted. I wanted to see what she sent, but on my terms. The message about Eleanor cut deeper than the others. Della knew exactly where to strike, but manipulation doesn't work when you recognize it for what it is. Monday morning, the mail arrived around 10. I retrieved it from the mailbox, bills, advertisements, and one official-looking envelope. Return address showed Davidson and Partners Legal Services. I opened it carefully at my kitchen table. The letter inside was printed on cheap letterhead, addressed to Otis James Gibson, from attorney Harold Davidson representing Chester Morrison and Della Gibson. Claims of unlawful eviction without proper notice, allegations of emotional distress, and loss of personal property. A demand for $30,000 within 10 business days or face civil litigation. Threats of maximum damages, including court costs and punitive penalties. I photographed the letter with my phone, emailed a copy to Margaret with the subject line, "They hired an attorney." She called back within an hour. I looked up Davidson, bottom-tier lawyer, mostly handles traffic tickets. This letter is laughable, so I should ignore it? Absolutely not. I'll respond formally. But Otis, this is predictable desperation. They're trying to scare you into settling. I don't scare easily anymore. Good. I'll draft a response citing their lack of lease, Chester's criminal charges, and the trespass order. This'll go nowhere. She paused. How long until his court date? Preliminary hearing is in 3 weeks. But there's something else we should discuss. The fraud angle. That afternoon I returned to my investigation. I'd been methodical before, but now I went deeper. I opened the spreadsheet I'd been maintaining, cross-referenced it with the credit report I'd pulled on myself. Something caught my attention immediately. A hard inquiry from Summit Financial Services, dated 6 months ago. I'd never applied for credit from any Summit company. The inquiry originated from Denver, where Chester had claimed those business meetings were happening. I returned to the Colorado Secretary of State website, pulled up Summit Solutions LLC again. This time I downloaded the full formation documents. Public record, available to anyone. There it was, a signature, supposedly mine, listed as managing member. I compared it to my actual signature on other documents. The forgery was clear once you knew to look. Different pen pressure, wrong slant on the letters. I picked up my phone, dialed Summit Financial directly. I'd like to inquire about a credit check you ran on my account 6 months ago. The representative transferred me to a loan officer. Yes, Mr. Gibson. You have an outstanding business loan with us. $15,000, opened last October. My hand tightened on the phone. I never applied for that loan. A pause. Sir, we have your application. Identification verification. What address is on the application? Keys clicking. 2247 Cascade Avenue, Colorado Springs. That's my address. But I didn't apply. Someone used my information fraudulently. Longer pause this time. That's a serious allegation. You'll need to file a fraud report. What's the current balance on this loan? $15,218. And sir, the account is 93 days past due. Chester took out a loan in my name, used forged documents and my address. Worse, he hadn't made a payment in 3 months, destroying my credit in the process. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was identity fraud. I spent Monday and Tuesday building the case, printed all the business registrations showing forged signatures, pulled credit card statements documenting $23,000 in unauthorized charges, downloaded the loan application from Summit Financial after I filed a fraud claim with them, created a timeline showing the pattern of fraud over 14 months, organized everything in labeled folders with the precision I'd learned in 35 years of auditing. I called the credit card company's fraud department, reported the unauthorized charges. They froze the card, started their investigation, provided me with fraud affidavit forms. Then I secured everything, changed passwords on all online banking accounts, complex ones, stored in a password manager, removed Chester from any authorized user lists, set up two-factor authentication on every account, placed fraud alerts on my credit file, froze my credit at all 3 bureaus so no one could open new accounts in my name. Tuesday evening, I sat back in my office chair and looked at what I'd assembled. 3 thick folders, every transaction traced, every forgery documented, every lie exposed in black and white. This is what I'd done for 35 years at the bank. Follow the money, find the truth. Chester chose the wrong mark. Wednesday morning, I drove downtown to the Colorado Springs Police Department. 15 minutes in light traffic, parked in the visitor lot. Brought all my documentation in my briefcase. The officer at the front desk directed me to the Economic Crimes Unit on the 3rd floor, smaller than the main station area. Desks in cubicles, a few detectives working quietly. "Can I help you?" The desk clerk looked up. "I need to file a fraud complaint. Identity theft and forgery. Fill out this form. Someone will call you within 2 business days." I opened my briefcase. I have complete documentation. $15,000 loan, $23,000 in credit card fraud, forged business registrations. She looked at the thickness of my documentation, then walked to an office and back. Returned with a woman in professional attire, mid-40s, sharp eyes. "I'm Detective Ann Morrison. You have documentation?" 3 years as bank auditor taught me to keep good records." She smiled slightly. "Come with me." Her office was small but organized, files stacked neatly on shelves. I laid out the case systematically. Timeline of events, business registrations with forged signatures, loan documents, credit card statements, credit reports showing the damage. Morrison took notes, asked questions, photographed everything. "This is thorough. Most victims come in with scattered information. I'm not most victims. The perpetrator, Chester Morrison, he's your son-in-law, was. My daughter's filing for divorce. I assumed this, though Della hadn't told me directly. And he was living with you when this occurred? For 14 months. I gave him access because I trusted family. That was my mistake." Morrison set down her pen, looked at me directly. "Mr. Gibson, this is serious fraud. We're talking multiple felonies. If we pursue charges, your son-in-law could face significant prison time." I met her eyes. No hesitation. "He stole my identity. He ruined my credit. He tried to break into my house with a crowbar. I want charges filed." She nodded slowly, closed her notepad. "I'll open an investigation. This'll take a few weeks to build the case, but from what you've shown me, we have more than enough for probable cause." Wednesday afternoon, driving home, I stopped at a red light. My phone buzzed, text message from an unknown number. "You're going to pay for what you did. Watch your back." The light turned green. I took a screenshot, forwarded it to Detective Morrison with a note. "Received this after filing report today." Set my phone down, continued driving. The threats didn't frighten me. They were just more evidence. Chester was digging his own grave deeper with every move. Detective Morrison called back sooner than I expected. Friday morning, 2 days after filing the report, I was working in the yard, trimming hedges, maintaining the routine that kept me grounded. My phone rang in my pocket. I set down the trimmers and answered. "Mr. Gibson, can you come to the station? I need a formal statement." "When?" "Today, if possible. This afternoon? I'll be there at 2. Bring any additional documentation you've gathered. The loan company sent us their records. This is building into a solid case." The sun was warm, the morning still cool. A routine spring day about to become something else. At 2 o'clock, I was back at the police station, 3rd floor, led into a small windowless room. Not an interrogation room. This was a victim interview. Table, 4 chairs, recording equipment on the wall. Detective Morrison was already there, files spread across the table. A second detective sat beside her, male, late 30s, introduced as Detective Garcia, her partner. Morrison started the recording, stated the date and time for the record, identified everyone present, explained this was a voluntary statement from a fraud victim. I remained calm, I'd sat through enough formal procedures during my banking career to know how these worked. Morrison guided me through the timeline chronologically. When did your daughter and son-in-law move in? January last year, 14 months total. They said it was temporary, 3 months maximum while they got on their feet. Did you charge rent? No. They're family. I wanted to help. Garcia leaned forward. When did you first suspect something was wrong? March of this year. I have overheard a phone conversation. Morrison made notes. Walk me through how you discovered the loan fraud. I explained the credit report check, the business registration search, the phone call to Summit Financial. Every detail documented. Did you ever authorize Chester Morrison to use your personal information for business purposes? Never? Not verbally? Not in writing? Not implied? Did you sign any documents he provided? No. I've seen the signatures on the business registrations. They're forgeries. Morrison flipped through her file. Let's quantify the losses. The loan? $15,000 plus late fees. Currently $15,218 outstanding, destroying my credit score. Credit card fraud. $23,000 over 12 months. Charged to a card I allowed him to use for household expenses only. Total financial loss, approximately $38,000. Plus damage to credit rating, which affects insurance rates, future loan possibilities. The real cost is higher. Morrison leaned back, exchanged a glance with Garcia. Mr. Gibson, you understand what we're looking at here? Identity theft, forgery, fraud. In Colorado, these are serious felonies. I understand. Your son-in-law could face 5 to 10 years in prison if convicted. I paused, met her eyes. He hunted me first. Planned around my death like I was already gone. I'm just bringing the truth to light. That's all we need to do. Establish the truth. The evidence supports your claims. We'll be pressing charges. Garcia opened a folder, showed me a document. Summit Financial had provided the loan application. My forged signature, my social security number, my address. The application claimed business expansion for Summit Solutions LLC, listed me as company owner. The loan had been approved based on my good credit history, which Chester had exploited. No payments made after the first 3 months. The bank had attempted contact at my address. Chester must have intercepted the mail. I examined the forged signature through my reading glasses. Close, but wrong. The G in Gibson looped differently. My real signature had a sharp angle. The forgery had a rounded curve. Amateur work, but good enough to fool a loan officer reviewing hundreds of applications. We'll need a few weeks to complete the investigation, coordinate with the DA's office, Morrison said. But Mr. Gibson, this case is solid. What happens next? We'll request an arrest warrant for additional charges. Identity theft, forgery, fraud. Given he's already out on bail for the attempted break-in, the judge might revoke bail. Garcia added, You should know. He'll likely take a plea deal. Most do when evidence is this strong. As long as there are consequences. There will be. The recording stopped. I signed the formal statement, 6 pages. Morrison provided her case number and direct contact information. I left the station and drove home. The weekend crawled past. I kept busy with household tasks, avoiding the empty feeling that came with quiet moments. Maintained the yard, cleaned the garage where Chester and Della's boxes had sat briefly, checked the security cameras periodically, a new habit since the incident. No contact from Della or Chester. The silence felt like a held breath before a storm. Monday morning around 8, I was making breakfast when a motion alert pinged on my phone. Security camera notification. I unlocked the screen, opened the app. Driveway camera view. Someone standing at the gate where the driveway met the sidewalk. Female figure. I zoomed in. Della. My chest tightened. She was violating the trespass order. But no, she stood on the public sidewalk, not on my property. Smart, just inside the line of legal. I switched between camera views. Driveway angle, front door angle. She wasn't approaching, just standing there, looking at the house. She appeared thinner than 2 weeks ago, hair pulled back messily, wearing jeans and an oversized sweatshirt. She was crying. I watched through my phone screen, my daughter, broken, at my gate. Part of me, the father part, wanted to go to her. The larger part, the survivor part, kept me inside. Della pulled out her phone, held it up. My phone rang. Her number. I didn't answer. Let it ring until voicemail. Through the camera, I watched her lower the phone, wipe her face with her sleeve. She stayed there, crying for several minutes. 20 minutes passed. Finally, she spoke, not toward the house, but into her phone. Left a voicemail. The notification appeared on my screen. I played it, watching her on camera simultaneously. "Dad, please, I know you're watching. I see the cameras. Please just listen. We have nowhere to go. Chester's in trouble. Legal trouble. Money trouble. I didn't know about the loan. I swear I didn't know. He told me it was his business loan, not yours. I never saw the paperwork. Please, I'm begging you. I'm your daughter. I made mistakes, but Chester manipulated me too. Please." Her voice broke throughout. Genuine desperation. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, watching my daughter fall apart at my gate. This was harder than the confrontation. Anger is easy. This, watching her suffer, was agony. But she'd stood by while Chester planned around my death. She'd pressured me for money. She'd enabled every theft, even if she didn't forge signatures herself. After Della left, walked away, got into a car down the street, drove off, I sat at the kitchen table, wrestling with the decision. I wasn't heartless. I wasn't cruel. I was protecting myself. But Della might be different from Chester. I called Margaret Hall. "Margaret, hypothetical question. If my daughter wasn't directly involved in Chester's fraud, can she be helped?" "Why are you asking?" "She came to the gate this morning, says she didn't know about the loan." A pause. "Did she violate the trespass order?" "Stayed on public sidewalk, technically compliant." "Otis, be careful. This could be manipulation." "I know, but what if she's telling the truth? If she genuinely didn't participate in the fraud, she won't face charges, but she'd need to cooperate with the investigation, testify if needed." "Against Chester?" "Yes. Would she do that?" Long pause. "I don't know." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "Here's what I suggest. If you want to help her, do it through proper channels. Not directly. I can contact her attorney, if she has one, or contact her directly on your behalf. Offer conditional support." "Conditional?" "She cooperates with the police investigation, testifies truthfully, files for divorce from Chester. In return, you provide temporary financial assistance. First and last month's rent somewhere, maybe. Enough to get started." "Not reconciliation?" "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it gives her a path that doesn't involve Chester destroying her life along with his own." "How much are we talking?" $3,000–4,000 for basic apartment setup. Let me consider it. Late afternoon, same day. I sat at my desk with a legal pad in front of me, drew a line down the middle of the page. Left column. Reasons to help Della. She's my daughter. Might not have known full extent. Chester controlled her. She has nothing now. Right column. Reasons not to help. She participated in manipulation. She pressured me for money. She stood by Chester's plans. Could be manipulation now. I stared at both lists. My pen hovered over the paper. Finally, I wrote at the bottom. Help. Conditional. Through Margaret. No direct contact. See if she chooses differently this time. My phone buzzed. Text from Detective Morrison. Arrest warrant approved for additional charges. Chester Morrison will be taken into custody tomorrow morning. Thought you should know. I read the message twice. Tomorrow, Chester's world collapsed further, and Della would have to choose, go down with him or save herself. Outside my window, evening sun cast long shadows across the lawn, the same lawn where Della used to play as a child. Different person now, different world. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened my laptop to email Margaret about the conditional assistance offer. One step forward. Always one step forward. Margaret made the call on Tuesday afternoon. I'd been waiting by the phone all day, sitting in the living room with coffee that had gone cold on the side table. When it finally rang around 3, I answered on the second ring. "I reached Della. Gave her your offer." "And?" She said no. Said she can't testify against her husband, that you're asking too much. I sat with that silence for a moment, processing. "Otis, I expected this. She's still tied to him. Fear, loyalty, manipulation, hard to say which. So that's it? For now. But circumstances change. Chester's formal arraignment is Thursday. When she hears the charges and potential sentence, her perspective might shift." I thanked her and hung up. Part of me felt disappointed. Another part, maybe larger, felt relieved. Simpler if she refused. Cleaner. But there was a third part, smaller and quieter, that just felt sad. She was choosing Chester over her own survival. Thursday morning, I drove downtown for the arraignment, parked in the courthouse garage, went through security, took the elevator to the third floor. Courtroom 3B was medium-sized, wood paneling, Colorado State SIL mounted behind the judge's bench. The gallery was half full, multiple cases scheduled that morning. I took a seat in the third row. Judge Patricia Hansen presided, 50s no-nonsense demeanor. Assistant DA Karen Wells sat at the prosecutor's table. Chester stood at the defense table in an orange jail jumpsuit, handcuffs on his wrists. His public defender looked young and overwhelmed. Della sat in the back row across the aisle from me. We didn't make eye contact. The bailiff called the case. State of Colorado versus Chester William Morrison. Chester was brought forward. The clerk read the charges aloud. Count 1, identity theft, Class 4 felony. Count 2, criminal forgery, Class 5 felony. Count 3, theft by deception, Class 4 felony. Count 4, attempted second-degree burglary, Class 4 felony. Count 5, criminal mischief, Class 2 misdemeanor. Judge Hansen looked at Chester. Mr. Morrison, you understand these charges? His voice came out tight. Yes, Your Honor. How do you plead? The public defender answered. Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor. Bail status? Ada Wells stood. State requests continued remand. Defendant has shown threatening behavior, violated protective orders. Your Honor, my client. Save it for trial. Judge Hansen's tone left no room for argument. Bail remains revoked. Trial date set for June 23rd. Next case. As the bailiff led Chester out, he turned and scanned the courtroom. His eyes found mine. Pure hatred in that look. I met his gaze calmly. Didn't look away first. He did. I was heading toward the elevator when I heard her voice behind me. Dad, wait. I turned. Della stood 10 feet away, looking small in the institutional hallway. Can we talk? 5 minutes? I glanced around. Public space. Safe enough. Here. She moved closer but stopped at arm's length. 5 years. They're talking about 5 years in prison. I heard 18 months to 5 years, depending on conviction. This is really happening. This happened the moment he forged my signature. Now it's just consequences. Her voice broke. I don't know what to do. Margaret told you the offer. It still stands. You want me to testify against my husband? I want you to tell the truth. There's a difference. He'll hate me. He's already destroying you. Question is whether you'll let him finish. Tears now. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. What are you more scared of, his anger or your future? She didn't answer. The offer expires when trial starts. After that, you're on your own. I pressed the elevator button. The doors opened immediately. Dad? I didn't turn around. I'm not your enemy, Della. But I'm not your rescue anymore either. Choose. I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed on her face, tears streaming. A week of silence followed. I didn't hear from Della, didn't expect to. Then Thursday evening, Margaret called. Della called me. She wants to cooperate. What changed? Chester sent her a letter from jail. Apparently blamed her for his arrest, said she should have controlled you better. Called her useless. Charming. She's ready to talk to the DA and she's filing for divorce. When? Tomorrow morning, both things. I'll coordinate. Friday afternoon, Della came to my house. Margaret was there as a buffer, professional mediator keeping everything appropriate. We sat at the kitchen table, afternoon sun streaming through the window. Coffee made but untouched. Tissue box between us. I knew he registered businesses using your address, Della began. He said it was normal, that lots of people use family addresses for LLCs. And the loan? I swear I didn't know. He told me he got approved for a business loan through his company. I never saw paperwork, never signed anything. Margaret leaned forward slightly. When did you realize something was wrong? Few months ago. Bills started coming to the house for Summit Solutions. Past due notices. I asked Chester. He said it was a billing error. You didn't question further? I kept my voice neutral. Her voice dropped. I was afraid to. When I pushed him on things, he got angry. Not hitting, but intimidating. Slamming doors, punching walls. I learned to stop asking. She looked at me directly then. After Mom died, I was lonely. Chester seemed confident, stable. By the time I realized he wasn't, we were married, and I felt trapped. You could have left. I know, I should have. I kept thinking he'd change back to who he was when we met. But that person never existed, did he? Probably not. I'm sorry. For the pressure about money. For not seeing what he was doing to you. For choosing him over you. I sat back, studied my daughter, saw genuine remorse. Also saw the girl who used to bring me breakfast in bed on Father's Day. Different person now, damaged, but maybe salvageable. If you testify truthfully, help convict him. File for divorce. I'll keep my word. 3 months' rent. I don't deserve your help. No, you don't. But I'm offering anyway. Once. Take it or leave it. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything I know. Margaret opened her folder. I've arranged a meeting with Adia Wells Monday morning. We'll go over your statement. Della gave her statement to the DA on Monday. By Wednesday, Chester knew. Wednesday evening, my phone lit up with text messages from an unknown number. Someone's smuggled phone or borrowed device. You turned my wife against me. Big mistake. You think you've won? This isn't over. Prison is temporary. What I do when I get out isn't. Better watch your back, old man. 18 months goes fast. You and Della will both pay. Count on it. I screenshot each message, forwarded them to Detective Morrison and Margaret simultaneously. Thursday morning, an emergency hearing was called. Judge Hanson reviewed the threatening messages. Mr. Morrison, did you send these messages? I don't have a phone, Your Honor. That wasn't the question. Did you send them or arrange for them to be sent? Chester stayed silent. Your silence is noted. Protective order is hereby extended and strengthened. 0 contact, direct or indirect, with Otis Gibson or Della Morrison. Violation results in additional charges. And, Mr. Morrison, your trial is in 2 weeks. I suggest you focus on that instead of threats. Chester was moved to a higher security section. Phone privileges revoked, all mail screened. That same afternoon, Della officially filed for divorce. The papers were served to Chester in jail. Margaret called that evening. Divorce papers filed and served. He can't contest from jail effectively. It'll be finalized in a few months. How's Della handling it? Better than expected. I think she's relieved to have a path forward. And the apartment? Found a place in Fountain, south of the city. Small 1-bedroom. $1,200 a month. I sent you the details. If you approve, I'll handle the transaction. Do it. First, last, and security deposit. Friday evening, the week before trial, I sat at my desk, reviewing trial preparation materials Margaret had sent. My testimony was scheduled for day 2. I was ready. Every document memorized, every transaction dated, every lie cataloged. My phone buzzed. Text from Della. Moved into apartment today. It's small, but it's mine. Thank you. I know I don't deserve it. I read the message twice. Didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Help doesn't require reconciliation. I set the phone down, returned to trial prep. Outside, evening settled into night. In 2 weeks, this chapter would close in a courtroom. Then came the final step, ensuring Della understood this help was temporary. That trust, once broken this completely, doesn't rebuild. I pulled out a different folder. Tab read, Estate Planning, Revised. Margaret had drafted a new will last week. I hadn't signed it yet. Wanted to wait until after trial, but I read it now. Della, $50,000. Enough to start over, not enough to coast. The rest, charitable foundation for elder abuse victims. Fair, final, done. Trial day arrived under overcast skies. Monday, June 23rd. I woke at 6, showered, put on my best suit. Navy blue, white shirt, conservative tie. The kind of outfit that projects credibility. I'd worn similar suits presenting audit findings to bank boards for 35 years. By 8:30, I was downtown, parking in the courthouse garage. Summer heat was building despite the clouds. The security line moved efficiently. My hands stayed steady. No nervousness, just focus. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, entered courtroom 3B at 9, larger than the arraignment room, major felony trial. The jury box held 12 jurors plus 2 alternates, already seated. Ada Karen Wells sat at the prosecution table with an assistant. Chester sat at the defense table beside his public defender, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt now, attempting respectability. Margaret sat in the second row. Della occupied the back corner. I walked down the center aisle to the victims section. Chester watched me approach. Our eyes met briefly, his jaw clenched. My expression stayed neutral. I sat, opened my folder, reviewed my notes. At 9:30, Judge Hanson called court to order. Opening statements began. Ada Wells stood. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about calculated theft. The defendant, Chester Morrison, systematically exploited his father-in-law's trust. She outlined the evidence: forged documents, stolen identity, fraudulent loan, credit card theft. The evidence will show a pattern of deception spanning 14 months, totaling $38,000 in theft and damages. You'll hear from the victim himself, a man who opened his home to family and got betrayal in return. The public defender's opening was weaker. My client made mistakes, but mistakes aren't crimes when there's no criminal intent. Chester Morrison was trying to build a business, support his family. He got confused about paperwork, made poor decisions. His father-in-law is angry about a family dispute and weaponizing the legal system. I listened without visible reaction. The evidence would dismantle these claims. The rest of Monday proceeded methodically. The Summit financial loan officer testified about the application with my forged signature, confirmed I'd never contacted the bank, never made payments, showed side-by-side comparisons of my genuine signature versus the forgery. Detective Morrison presented her investigation findings, the evidence collection process, the timeline of fraud, Chester's pattern of behavior. A forensic document examiner provided expert testimony. In my professional opinion, these signatures were not written by the same person. Statistical probability analysis shows 99.7% certainty of forgery. Court adjourned at 5. I drove home, ate a simple dinner, reviewed my notes until midnight. The next morning I returned. Tuesday, 9:45. After preliminary witnesses, the bailiff called my name. The state calls Otis James Gibson. I stood, walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, sworn in, sat, made eye contact with the jury. Ada Wells approached. Mr. Gibson, please tell the jury your relationship to the defendant. He married my daughter 3 years ago. He became my son-in-law. And in January of last year, what happened? They asked to move into my house temporarily. Said they needed 3 months to get on their feet financially. Did they pay rent? No. They were family. I wanted to help. When did you first suspect something was wrong? March of this year. I overheard a phone conversation where Chester discussed waiting for me to die so they could inherit my house. What did you do? I began auditing my finances. That's my professional background, banking auditor, 35 years. What did you find? $23,000 in unauthorized credit card charges over 12 months, 3 businesses registered to my address without my knowledge, and a $15,000 loan taken in my name. Did you authorize any of these? None of them. I never signed documents, never gave verbal permission, never implied consent. Wells presented exhibits one by one. I identified each methodically. Credit card statements, business registrations with forged signatures, the loan application, my genuine signature for comparison. I spoke like I was presenting audit findings to a board of directors. No emotion, pure facts, dates, amounts, specific transactions. I noticed several jurors taking extensive notes. One older woman shook her head slightly while looking at Chester. Cross-examination began. The defense attorney tried to portray me as vengeful. Mr. Gibson, isn't it true you were angry about a family disagreement? I was angry about theft. There's a difference. You changed the locks while they were away, didn't you? I secured my property after discovering fraud. That's not vengeance. That's protection. Some of these credit card charges were for household items, correct? Some were. Most weren't. I have spreadsheets categorizing every charge. Would you like to see them? He didn't want to open that door. That won't be necessary. You allowed your daughter and son-in-law to live with you rent-free for over a year. That suggests generosity, not exploitation. I was generous. That generosity was exploited. The evidence proves it. Then Chester stood suddenly. You vindictive old... Judge Hanson's gavel cracked like thunder. Mr. Morrison, sit down. Chester's attorney pulled him back to his seat. One more outburst and you'll be removed. Continue, counselor. The outburst damaged Chester's case. The jury saw his lack of control. I remained composed, didn't react. Tuesday afternoon, Della took the stand. She walked forward, didn't look at Chester. Mrs. Morrison, did you know your husband forged your father's signature? No. I knew he registered businesses using Dad's address. He said it was normal. Did you know about the loan? Not until the police investigation. Chester told me it was his own business loan. Did your husband ever discuss inheriting your father's property? Her voice shook. Yes. He talked about it frequently. Said once Dad was gone, we'd have the house and could finally live comfortably. On cross-examination, the defense tried to attack her credibility. You're testifying against your husband in exchange for immunity, correct? I'm testifying truthfully. I'm also divorcing him. Convenient timing. I should have left him years ago. I was afraid. I'm not anymore. Wednesday, final day, closing arguments. Adia Wells stood before the jury. The defense wants you to believe this was confusion, poor judgment. But look at the pattern. Forged signatures, hidden businesses, stolen identity, threatening behavior when caught. This wasn't one mistake. This was calculated, systematic theft spanning 14 months. Mr. Gibson opened his home. The defendant took everything he could and planned for more. Hold him accountable. That's justice. The defense closing was weak. Family situations are complicated. Money disagreements happen. He knew the case was lost. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. At 4:30, the bailiff announced they'd reached a verdict. Everyone returned to the courtroom. The foreperson was the older woman who'd shaken her head during my testimony. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. Count 1, identity theft. Guilty. Count 2, forgery. Guilty. Count 3, theft by deception. Guilty. Count 4, attempted burglary. Guilty. Count 5, criminal mischief. Guilty. Chester's head dropped. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. In the back, Della cried quietly. I had no visible reaction, just steady breathing. Judge Hanson addressed Chester directly. Mr. Morrison, you systematically betrayed family trust for financial gain. You forged documents, stole identity, and threatened violence when exposed. The court sentences you to 18 months in Colorado, Department of Corrections, followed by 5 years supervised probation. You will pay restitution to Mr. Gibson in the amount of $38,000. You are prohibited from any contact with Otis Gibson for 10 years. Bailiff, remand the defendant. Chester was taken into custody immediately. As the bailiff led him out, he turned, looked at me one final time. No words, just defeated hatred. I watched him disappear through the side door. It was over. Early evening, courthouse steps. Margaret waited outside. You did well, very well. It was just facts. Facts presented by the right person. That made the difference. What's next? I have the revised will in my office. We can sign it tomorrow if you're ready. I'm ready? Della appeared from around the corner, hesitant. Dad? I turned, looked at her. Thank you for helping me get out. You helped yourself. The testimony was yours. Will we ever? I don't know, Della. Not today. I walked toward the parking garage. Margaret followed. Della stood alone on the courthouse steps, watching me leave. The sun broke through clouds briefly, casting long shadows across granite steps. Justice served, family fractured, life continuing. I reached my car, unlocked it, sat in the driver's seat. Tomorrow, the will, the final act, ensuring this never happens again. I started the engine and drove toward home. The day after sentencing, Margaret and I signed the new will. Thursday morning, her office. Papers spread across the polished table. Last chance to reconsider, Margaret said. Della gets $50,000. The remainder, $320,000, goes to the Elder Financial Abuse Prevention Foundation. Something useful coming from something terrible. I signed. Official. Final. Done. 3 weeks passed. Then Della called. Dad, can we meet? Just talk? Why? Please, one conversation. Neutral location. The coffee shop on Cascade? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. 30 minutes, no more. Sunday morning. Mountain View Coffee. I arrived early, chose a corner table. Della entered at 10:05. I barely recognized her. 20 pounds lighter, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes, exhaustion in every line. Thank you for coming. You have 30 minutes. I destroyed everything, didn't I? She wrapped her hands around her tea mug. After Mom died, you shut down. I felt abandoned. Chester paid attention to me. By the time I realized what he was, we were married. That doesn't explain planning around my death. I never planned that. Chester did. I should have stopped him, but I was weak. I leaned forward. You felt abandoned, so you enabled him? Tears streamed. Chester planted those seeds. I didn't agree, but I didn't stop him either. Silence is agreement, Della. I'm sorry. For everything. For choosing him over you. Sorry doesn't fix broken trust. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just apologizing. Because you deserve to hear it. Della, I loved you your entire life. But what happened? Broke something fundamental. I know. I reached into my jacket, removed a folded check, set it on the table. $5,000, better apartment, moving costs. She stared. Why? Because you testified. Because you're divorcing Chester. Because you're still my daughter. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. But I'm offering it anyway. This is the last money you'll get from me. Ever. Build your own life now, without Chester, without me. You're cutting me off? I'm setting you free. You're 34. You're capable. But you've been dependent. That ends now. And us? Long pause. I don't know. Not today. Maybe someday. Maybe never. That's it? We're done being who we were. What we become depends on time and whether real change happens. I want to change. Then do it. Show me. Over years, not weeks. She took the check with shaking hands. I love you, Dad. I love you too, but love doesn't mean trust, and it doesn't mean proximity. I stood. Good luck, Della. I mean that. Will you ever call? Focus on yourself. That's the point. I walked to the exit. Behind me, her quiet sob. I stepped into sunlight. The door closed. In the rearview mirror, Della sat at the table, head in her hands. I drove away. The hardest mercy I'd ever given. August arrived with dry heat and clear skies. I stood on my porch with coffee early morning. The garden thrived. Security camera visible. Normal suburban routine. 6 months. March to August. Victim to survivor. Chester was in prison. Della worked at an accounting firm, lived independently. She sent occasional texts. I read them, didn't respond. Mid-morning, Brian called over the fence. You're stronger than 6 months ago. Not stronger, just clarity. I stopped letting myself be used. Haven't seen your daughter. She's living her own life now, maybe always. Sometimes distance is kindness. Exactly, Margaret called. Everything's closed. Will registered. Foundation established. Restitution order in place. So it's done. You've earned peace. Evening, I opened my laptop, created a document. When family becomes threat, how I protected my life. Wrote for an hour. Not revenge. Warning, help for others who might recognize the pattern. I looked at the wall, photos of Della as a child. That girl was real. The woman who enabled Chester was also real. Both true, both hurt. The photo stayed. The memory stayed. But the door stayed closed. Love doesn't mean access. Love means hoping she finds her way, from distance. Final paragraph. Safety comes first. If family threatens that, family comes last. I'm alive. I'm secure. I'm free. That's victory enough. Night. Made rounds. Checked locks. All secure. Bedroom window overlooked the quiet street. No Chester. No manipulation. No fear. Just quiet. Just home. Just my life. 6 months ago, I was prey. Today, just a man with peace. I closed the curtains, turned off the lamp. Darkness. Sleep. Tomorrow, another day of freedom. Outside, the neighborhood slept. Inside, so did Otis Gibson. Peacefully, finally. Alone and unafraid. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.